Hi, welcome back to Elite Literary Book Group. I'm Rachel Beck, and today I'm going to go through a Q3 question, and I'm going to use Death of a Salesman. So if you're getting closer to the test and you feel like you haven't read enough novels, try to get some plays under your belt, because especially if they're like Arthur Miller's plays like Death of a Salesman, and next week I'm going to do The Crucible. I've done The Doll's House, I've done King Lear. Those will give you a variety of universal themes. That's why you want to look at some classic literature, because it's timeless. And as you'll see, it's as hard as this play is very much a realist type play where you're up and close to this family. It's unfortunately relevant today, and the message is universal. So it's sort of, this kind of thing kind of happens to everyone. Mary Carr would say that a dysfunctional family is 3 people. So let's look at this question. Many works of literature contain a character who intentionally deceives others. The character's dishonesty may be intended either to help or hurt. Such a character, for example, may choose to mislead others for personal safety, to spare someone's feelings, or to carry out a crime. Choose a novel or play in which the character deceives others. Then, in a well-written essay, analyze the motives for that character's deception and discuss how the deception contributes to the work of the meaning as a whole. Okay, so with Death of a Salesman, first let me say something about the prompt first. If you get a prompt like this that asks a very specific question, like how does a character deceive someone, the temptation is to look at a couple of incidents in the book where that character deceived somebody. Like in Willy Loman's case, we could look at the way he's lying about making money, or we find out that he's lying about, he was lying to his son about having an affair. And if we use those as what we're going to talk about in the essay, what will happen is we'll just end up talking about plot. And so we need something to be like an umbrella over these things. Yeah, we can talk specifically about that, but we have to think about the theme itself, because that's what's going to help us talk about the work as a whole. So this is about the American dream. It's about the promise of the American dream. But that promise, more often than not, is an illusion. There's a Kipling poem that is called If, and one of the lines says, "If you can dream and not make dreams your master." And in Willy Loman's case, this dream of the American dream, the promise that, if you just work hard enough, everything's gonna turn out okay. You'll get all the opportunities, and you'll see that you can be successful if you devote your life to this. And what's sad about this is Willie does work really hard, and it doesn't work. But there's more to, the dream itself that makes Willie have to lie. One of the things that he believes about the dream is that it's really a popularity contest. He kind of has an immature view of, like you would in adolescence, about being the most popular person or something like that. That's his view of who gets ahead and who doesn't, and it's not true. The other thing that's not true that he believes is he believes that if he's not successful, his family won't love him. And unfortunately, because he believes that, that's the message that he gives his kids. And if you look at your own life, you could probably see how, if you have parents who are a little bit overly interested in your life, where they really believe in you and they're always telling you, you're going to be great, you're going to do wonderful things. And if that's the message that you get growing up, if things don't turn out well, the failure is more crushing, because you feel like you've disappointed people, and in a way you might feel like you're not going to be loved if you don't do these things. And that's kind of what happens to Willie's children. So in the beginning of the play, my cat's going to be a maniac till I feed him, but I may have to pause this and go feed him. But in the beginning of the play, when Willie comes back, he's been driving. He couldn't make it wherever he was headed. I have to pause this and come back. Okay, so Mr. Bubba has been fed. Now I think he's napping. But at any rate, okay, so he gets back home, and there's something going on with Willie that's not really clear in the text, but you could see it as is like almost he's having some kind of dementia issues. He's losing his focus and his memory. And, part of it you could say, it sounds like an early onset of dementia or something like that. But it could also be like a nervous breakdown. And he's coming home empty-handed night after night. And he's working. His boss has made him go on commission. He's not on salary anymore. And he's kind of falling apart because he's living still in the past, where he believes in himself and he believes that, everything's going to be fine. And then some kind of reality hits him. And you notice that he's never present. He's either in the past or he's in the future. And the way Arthur Miller shows this is kind of through interior monologue, where it's not like a soliloquy where they stand on the stage and, say to be or not to be, that is the question. He's not addressing the audience. It's almost like if you just got to see what's going on in his mind. And a lot of us have a mind that's constantly going back and forth in time, that if we were to voice that, people would think that we were crazy. And he doesn't have any awareness. It's like the ego is still strong, that he's hoping and wishing for reality to be a certain way, and it's almost like he's fighting against it. The other thing you see in the beginning is where they live in Brooklyn. And what you find out about Willie is he's really more of an outdoorsy person. And he's in these apartments that, I guess when they moved there, it wasn't as crowded, but it's becoming more so. There are more apartments, right, coming. And you get this sense that he's being crowded out of his life. And he says, the grass doesn't grow here. And remember, we had those trees. They've massacred this neighborhood. And that's sort of symbolic of what's going on with how everybody's struggling to get ahead and working, and what do they have to show for it. And that's sort of the critique here of the American dream, is that, yeah, we have this wonderful ideal, but look at the way people are living. And even today, it's like most of us are living paycheck to paycheck. And if I tried to move to New York, for what I pay for my house, I couldn't get a 1-bedroom studio apartment. So, and this is like the late 1940s, 50s. So not only is Willie lost, his sons are too. They can't really find their place in the world. And because he's going back and forth with his memories, we're seeing what the past is, like as a flashback. So let me just read this one scene. His son is Biff and Happy. Happy was Harold, and they call him Happy. And they have these long-term neighbors Charlie, who they call Uncle Charlie, and then his son Bernard. Bernard is a very hardworking, studious guy that Willie thinks is just really a nerd. And he's so glad that his sons aren't like Bernard. And Bernard keeps telling Biff, who's this, football star, you're flunking math. You're not going to graduate. You got to let me help you. And Charlie is also trying to help Willie throughout the play. But you see this scene at flashback where they're kind of playing football, and Willie says, don't be a pest, Bernard. What an anemic. Bernard, okay, I'm waiting for you at my house, Biff. And Willie says, Bernard is not well liked, is he? He's liked, but he's not well liked. That's right, Pop. That's just what I mean. Bernard can get the best marks in school, you understand? But when he gets out in the business world, you understand, you are going to be 5 times ahead of him. That's why I think, God Almighty, you're both built like Adonises. Because the man who makes an appearance in the business world, the man who creates personal interest, is the man who gets ahead. Be liked, and you'll never want. You take me, for instance. I've never had to wait in line to see a buyer. And then he starts talking about how great and successful he is and how everybody admires him. But not too long after that, he just had a conversation with his wife where he's saying, people don't know me anymore and they laugh at me. And she's going, no, they couldn't possibly. And he would say something like, I'm fat. And so there's this insecurity that he has about not being liked, which is kind of sad when you're 63 years old, that you're still worried. It's kind of like King Lear, So one of the tragedies about King Lear is he's older, but he's no wiser, and he's still vain. And so he has this kind of adolescent idea about being liked. That's what's important. And one of the things he says to Biff says he was making fun of his teacher in front of the class. Now, this is the one who's failing him. He should be doing everything he possibly can to win over this guy's generosity, mercy. But no, he starts imitating him at the board and making fun of him. And Willie's whole concern with this is not that you're failing, but did the other kids laugh? Did they like you? Does everyone like you? And guess what? It doesn't get him anywhere. And Bernard ends up being a lawyer. So in the meantime, the boys are back home. Biff also has a problem with stealing. He's actually been in jail, but he hasn't told his parents that. They think he's just been trying to find himself on a farm, which his dad says, not finding yourself at 34 is a disgrace. You should know what you're going to do and do it. But Biff doesn't want to be like his father. And I think that's kind of why he steals. He knows he's supposed to have this American dream, but he doesn't know how to get it. And they're also noticing that Dad is kind of out of his mind. He's talking to himself. He's out there in his slippers, talking about what he's going to build and all this kind of stuff. And they're talking to the mom, and she's upset with them because she doesn't see them contributing to, the household, the family, and y'all aren't helping him. And she says to them, and what goes through a man's mind driving 700 miles home without having earned a cent? Why shouldn't he talk to himself? Why? When he's got to go to Charlie and borrow $50 a week and pretend to me that it's his pay. How long can that go on? How long? You see what I'm sitting here and waiting for? And you tell me he has no character? The man who never worked a day but for your benefit? When does he get a medal for that? Is this his reward to turn around at the age of 63 and find his sons, who he loved better than his life, one a philandering bum? Mom, that's all you are, my baby. And she's saying that to Happy. And then she says, and what happened to you, your love for him? You were such pals. How you used to talk to him on the phone every night. how lonely he was so he could come home to you. What she doesn't know is that Biff, after he had failed this class and he needed to go to summer school, and he's like, oh, I gotta go tell my dad, it's gonna ruin his football scholarship. So he goes to the location where his dad is, and there's another woman in there. And he tries to hide the woman in the bathroom, but she ends up coming out and talking anyways. And at this point, Biff, it's like his whole world just comes crashing down, because the sad thing is, Willie doesn't understand how loved he is by his family, regardless. His sons would still idolize him if he didn't have all these stories, because they just want a father. And so, you see in the play, his wife is mending her stockings, and Willie says, I won't have you mending your stockings. Like, I'm going to buy you new stockings. She's probably mending them because she knows the stockings are never going to come. But Biff sees his dad give the other woman the stockings, and he starts to cry and said, you gave that woman Mama's stockings. And see, in a play, everything is very symbolic. It seems like a very small thing, but it is a very heartbreaking scene to see this boy, because what he's saying is, I can't believe anything about you anymore. I can't trust you as my father. You don't care about my mother. And after that is when Biff really doesn't care about anything. He doesn't go to summer school. He just, he's done in a way. But I want to go back with this dysfunction that Willie has. It reminds me of a quote that I heard from Joseph Campbell. And Joseph Campbell was all about following your bliss, not following the money, but following, really what your heart's desire is. And there's an interview, The Power of Myth, that Bill Moyers does with him, and he says, I can hear people in the audience saying, all that follow your bliss stuff, that's okay for like the George Lucases of the world, or Joseph Campbell, but that's not what happens in my life. And Campbell says, oh, you bet it does. And I want to share this quote with you. He says, if a person doesn't listen to the demands of his own spiritual and heart life and insist on a certain program, you're going to have a schizophrenic crack up. He has aligned himself with a chromatic life, and it's not the one the body's interested in at all. And see, so that's kind of interesting to look at what Campbell's saying happens to a person is what's happening to Willie Loman. And what you find out is that Willie is actually really good with fixing things with his hands. And he doesn't pursue what it is that really makes him tick. He was just looking for the money. And even following the money ends up being a disappointment. There's a scene where he has to go and tell his boss, I can't do the driving anymore. I'm going to have to do this in town. And he's like, oh, no, you can't. You're a traveling salesman. Now, they've already put him on commission. And Howard, his boss, was just a baby when Willie was working for his dad. And, his dad asked him about, how do you like the name Howard? And he said, oh, I thought it was a great name. So Willie's idea is, I named him Howard. I named him. And look how he treats me. And in the scene where he's confronting him, the guy is really preoccupied with this new machine, which is a recorder. And again, that's symbolic, though, of what is taking over. That there is a scarcity problem. And part of the problem is the more we get evolved with technology and machines, the less useful humans are. So this is a big problem. And he's talking about, why he wanted to be a salesman. I'm going to skip that part. and just go to where it says, you know, in those days there was personality in it, Howard. There was respect and comradeship and gratitude in it. Today it's all cut and dry. There's no chance for bringing friendship to bear or personality. You see what I mean? They don't know me anymore. And it's sort of like the mayor of Casterbridge, and when I talked about the struggle of generations, this would be a good one for that too. Because he's like, you know, what was great about being a salesman is you connected with people. If you had a good personality and you liked people, that was what it was about. And it's not about that anymore. You know, it's so cut and dry that we don't have these relationships. And so they start arguing about it, and Willie says, I'm talking about your father. There were promises made across this desk. You mustn't tell me you got people to see. I put 34 years into this firm, Howard, and now I can't pay my insurance. You can't eat the orange and throw the pill away. Man is not a piece of fruit. Now pay attention. Your father in 1928, I had a big year. I averaged $170 a week in commissions. Now, Willie, you never averaged that much money. We don't know if Willie was ever successful because Willie is so full of hot air that, you know, in his mind, I was great. And now look at how I'm being treated. And this is probably the most honest thing that he says throughout the play is that, you know, man is not a piece of fruit. We're talking about human beings. I did all this work and now I can't pay my insurance. And the other problem with his belief that he is only loved by his success is he believes that if I killed myself and I got the insurance money, boy, wouldn't they be happy. That's a good plan. And so he has been trying to kill himself and make it look like a car accident. And his wife also tells Biff that he's been there. She found this tube thing, and I guess he was connecting it to the hot water heater or something. He was like trying to poison himself. So he's trying to kill himself and make it look like an accident, because that's not his life isn't worth anything. It's just this dream. And in the meantime, what you also see is that he has a real tragic flaw, and that's pride. Because his neighbor, Charlie, has offered him a job. And it's not commission. I will pay you. I mean, he's loaning him the money anyways. He may as well work there. And he can't bring himself to do it. And even Charlie says, you know, when are you going to grow up? And, you know, why can't you work for me? Are you jealous of me? And he is. It's really just a prideful thing that he can't. But he has to go to Charlie now because he's got to get some money. He gets into the office and he sees Bernard. Bernard is a successful lawyer, the one that he called, I don't know why anemic is such a put down, but I guess that's the little nerdy guy that he thought, you know, nobody will like him. And Charlie says, you know, how do you like this kid? He's going to argue a case in front of the Supreme Court. And Bernard's modest. He's like, Pop, don't. And Willie says, no, the Supreme Court. I got to run. Bye, Dad. Knock him dead, Bernard. The Supreme Court. And he didn't even mention it. You don't have to. He's going to do it. And you never told him what to do, did you? You never took any interest in him. My salvation is that I never took any interest in anything. Here's some money. So you see this different parenting style where Willie is all about control. You didn't mold him into this lawyer. How did he do that? He did it on his own. He found himself on his own. Studying was, I would say, almost natural to Bernard to be studious. But that's not natural to Biff or Happy. I mean, even Biff, he tells his brother, you know, like guys like us, we should be using our hands, you know. We're built for like construction and things like that. We're not built to sit in an office. And neither is Willie. If Willie understood who he was, he would know that about himself. And it's all boasting and talk with Willie. And for Charlie is his character foil. He's modest. His son is modest. Why do we have to talk about it when you can do it? You know, it's only like really insecure people that have to keep talking the game and keep bragging about themselves. So Charlie finds out that Howard fires him. And Willie says, "That's snot nose. Imagine that. I named him. I named him Howard." Willie, when are you going to realize that those things don't mean anything? You named him Howard. But you can't sell that. The only thing you got in this world is what you can sell. And the funny thing is, you're a salesman and you don't know that. I've always tried to think otherwise, I guess. I always felt that if a man was impressive and well-liked, that nothing... Why must everybody like you? Who liked J.P. Morgan? Was he impressive? So it's like he doesn't have the maturity to see that, okay, I understand when you're in middle school and high school that this is your view of the world. But at some point, you have to realize that that is a lie. That, you know, if it's what you do as far as the work is concerned, the quality of the work, the attention you pay to it. No one else is going to say, "Oh, wow, this guy's he's so good looking. You want a job?" I mean, it just doesn't work that way. And so, you know, he's lied to his family about what is really important in life because he doesn't know. So in my thesis, I would have to show that he's deceiving himself, and by deceiving himself, he's deceiving others. And he says to Charlie, he says, "Funny, you know, after all the highways and trains and appointments and the years, you end up worth more dead than alive." Willie, nobody's worth nothing dead. Did you hear what I said? Willie, apologize to Bernard for me when you see him. I didn't mean to argue with him. He's a fine boy. They're all fine boys. And they'll end up big. All of them. Someday, they'll all play tennis together. Wish me luck, Charlie. He saw Bill Oliver today, which he means Biff. Good luck. And then he says, "Charlie, you're the only friend I got." Isn't that a remarkable thing? He talks about having all these people, and yet there's nobody really. And he's not very nice to Charlie. Why Charlie puts up with him, we don't know. But Biff's meeting doesn't go well. They have this disastrous dinner. Biff ends up stealing the guy's pen. He just can't help himself. And he finally says, "I want to have a real conversation with my family. We never tell the truth in this house." And his brother is always echoing his dad, "We always tell the truth in this house." You know, he says, no. And this is what he has to say. He's fighting with his dad. And he also confronts him about how, "I know you've been trying to commit suicide. Nobody's hanging himself, Willie. I ran down 11 flights with a pen in my hand today, and suddenly I stopped. You hear me? And in the middle of the office building, do you hear this? I stopped in the middle of the building and I saw the sky. I saw the things that I love in this world. The work and the food and the time to sit and smoke. And I looked at the pen and I said to myself, what the hell am I grabbing this for? Why am I trying to become what I don't want to be? What am I doing in an office, making a contemptuous begging fool of myself when all I want is out there waiting for me the minute I say I know who I am? Why can't I say that, Willie?" And he gets very emotional with his dad. Dustin Hoffman, I can't think of the son's name, John Malkovich is Biff. It's a very emotional scene. He's trying to hug his dad, physically touch him and say, why can't you just let me go and just let me be? Because part of the thing that's driving Willie crazy is Biff. He's projected onto his son what's going on with himself. And, you know, he just wants some reality here, some truth. And he says, Pop, I'm a dime a dozen, and so are you. And he says, I am not a dime a dozen. I am Willie Loman, and you are Biff Loman. And then he starts to, like, they're almost physically attacking each other. And Biff says, I am not a leader of men, Willie, and neither are you. You were never anything but a hard-working drummer who landed in the ash can like the rest of them. I'm $1 an hour. Willie, I tried 7 states and couldn't raise it. $1 an hour. You gather my meaning? I'm not bringing home any prizes anymore, and you're going to stop waiting for me to bring them home. You vengeful, spiteful mutt. Pop, I'm nothing. I'm nothing, Pop. Can't you understand that? There's no spite in it anymore. It's just what I am, that's all. And this is where he gets emotional. It says, will you let me go for Christ's sakes? Will you take that phony dream and burn it before something happens? I'll go in the morning. Put him to bed, he says, and then Willie's sitting there and he says, isn't that remarkable? Biff, he likes me. Well, duh. He loves you. And they keep trying to tell him he loves you. But he can't quite believe that. And he's saying, you know, he cried to me. You know, and it was just such a sweet moment. But then he changes like that and says, you know what? That boy's going to be magnificent one day. You know, instead of just saying, you know, here's your son. He forgives you. He loves you. You don't have to be all these things for him to accept you. Just let him be. Tell him that you don't have to be all these things to be loved. And that's what's really showing this crisis as a whole. And so Willie, he's all excited, and he gets in his car, and then he thinks about that insurance money, and he kills himself. And at the funeral, it kind of reminds me of Great Gatsby, because nobody's there except the neighbors, Charlie and Bernard, and his sons and his wife. And Linda says, I can't understand it. All this, at this time, especially the first time in 35 years, we were just about free and clear. He only needed a little salary. He was even finished with the dentist. And Charlie says, no man only needs a little salary. I can't understand it. There were a lot of nice days when he'd come home from a trip, or Sundays, and make the stoop, finishing that cellar, putting on the new porch, when he built the extra bathroom and put up the garage. You know something, Charlie? There's more of him in that front stoop than in all the sales he's ever made. Yet he was a happy man with a batch of cement. He was so wonderful with his hands. He had the wrong dreams. All wrong. Don't say that. He never knew who he was. And that's where you have to get to as the meaning of the whole. That all of this is an illusion. It's a dream. And the sad thing is that they would have been okay. You know, if they had just had each other, if maybe he got the job with Charlie, and, you know, instead he went out that way because of his obsession with his false self. All right, so anyways, I'll stop there, and next week I'm going to do a video on The Crucible, which is also Arthur Miller. So hopefully you'll join me for that. All right, thanks for listening.